Hey everybody, this is my 40 breeder, and in my 40 breeder I have a Dwarf Pike Cichlid, although I don't see her at the moment, but it is a Crenicichla regani, and I was asked to shoot some video about her the other day. A viewer of mine is thinking about getting one and just wanted some up-close looks and a little bit of information about what my experience with them is so far. So I would be happy to do that, but first I want to get the tank cleaned up because we've got all kind of grunge all over the glass. You can see how green the glass is. So that'll wipe right off, no problem. I've even got some little bits of my polyfill material cut into small squares. That's what I use to wipe the glass down with, so that will be easy enough. And then once we get done with the water change, I'll probably get in here. I'll also trim down some of my temple plant. You can see those little white roots coming out of there. If I trim it down here and throw that into my grow out tank, I'll have a whole entire new plant. And I will do the same with the shoot back there. I'd like to keep these a little lower and more squat in the tank. I really don't want them growing up and getting exposed to the atmospheric air. So I'm going to get on with doing a little bit of maintenance on this tank, a basic water change. There she is. I was wondering if she was going to come out and make an appearance before we got to the after part of this video. So that is the fish I'm talking about. That is my Dwarf Pike Cichlid. That is a Crenicichla regani. The females in this species are actually more attractive than the males. They get that color on their belly, and then they get those beautiful white markings on their dorsal fin, and also the little white and red markings right there on the tip of the caudal fin. The males do not have that. And then, of course, if we went into the spawning colors, if I did have a male in the tank with her and she was to color up during spawning, she would get even more vibrant, and her belly would get really bright red, I believe, or bright yellow, something like that. I'm not sure. So let me get on with doing my water change, and then we will come back and we'll get a little bit better look at her once the tank is a little clearer. And we will be able to have a little chat about my experience with her. But so far, I'm going to say I definitely recommend those little Dwarf Pike Cichlids if you've got an appropriate tank setup for them. They're really fantastic fish. This is not the first one I've had. So sit tight. Consider this your before. Alright, we're going to call this the middle part. I got distracted. I decided I was going to go ahead and clean out the filter while I was draining the tank. And while I was doing that, the tank really drained out. I'm used to doing like 55s and 125s. These smaller tanks, like a 40, is a bit, it takes a very short period of time to drain a lot of water out of it. So you can see I've already wiped the glass down. I've unfortunately let the heater become way more exposed than I would like it to. And I can see that the light is on, so that's okay, no biggie. And of course the water didn't drain so low that the fish were in any danger. But this is going to be a significant water chemistry change when you swap out that much water. Now my water should be similar enough that it won't make that big of a difference. But I did want to give you a look at how much water I actually took out of the tank there, because this is an unusually large water change even for me, you know, doing a fairly large water change. This was a really big one. So sit tight, let me get it filled back up and I'll show you the after. Alright, and here's the tank all filled back up. Now I've waited a little while for all the bubbles and detritus and everything to settle down. As you know, after a water change, the tank always looks a little messy for a while. And I didn't get in there and actually physically remove any of the bubbles. One of the things that I usually do if I really want to get the bubbles out of the tank because I want to shoot a video, or I'm just impatient and want to get the bubbles out of the tank quickly, I take a turkey baster and I just draw water up into it and then just pump water across wherever the bubbles are, whether they're on plants or the woodwork, or in this case I've still got some stuck to the glass. And you just sort of squirt the bubbles off with a turkey baster, and that's a good way of doing it. You won't damage the plants or anything like that. Turkey baster is also pretty good to use when you want to swirl up the debris that's underneath the stuff or behind things in corners. You can always use something like that. So we cut down my temple plant over here. Cut two big pieces off of it. The one in the front was really getting big and it was actually growing up into the glass. when I open the hood. So I cut that way down here, and hopefully it'll branch and fork, and we'll get a couple new smaller pieces coming out. And then the one in the back was real long and spindly, and it was real close to the power head, and I think that's what was keeping it from growing properly. So I wound up just pulling that out altogether and removing it from the tank. So other than that, I wiped the glass down. I did pull the filter out and do a filter change, as I said, and that's about it. So as far as my experience with keeping this Dwarf Pike Cichlid, I know I said I was going to talk about it, and it's been more of a water change video than a video about my Dwarf Pike Cichlid, but my experience with keeping them has been very positive. They're great little fish. Now, when I keep cichlids, whether it's angelfish or the rams, any kind of cichlid I tend to keep singularly. I will keep pairs of angelfish because they're not too aggressive, even when they pair off and are spawning. As long as the tank's big enough, the angelfish aren't too bad. But I've seen small fish like little Crenicichla, little crebensis. About the size of these rainbow fish in here is what a crebensis is. And I've seen 2 of those fish pair off and keep every other fish in this 40-gallon tank huddled in a corner in terror. So I generally try to keep my cichlids singularly so they don't go into that spawning behavior and become really aggressive. And as such, my Crenicichla back here, and again, this is Crenicichla regani, she never shows aggression to anybody. I would imagine if I had some really tiny little neons or some little nano fish in there, I would imagine she might gobble them up. She is a predatory fish. And that mouth is probably a lot bigger than it looks. The whole front end of her face opens up. It's sort of this long, broad, flat mouth. So they probably can eat fish bigger than you might think. But you can see I've got these little glow light tetras and stuff swimming around here. I've got guppies in this tank, and they're fine. So she's not, you know, super aggressive when it comes to feeding or whatever. And she's certainly not territorial. You can see she doesn't chase any other fish around or anything like that. I've never really noticed her to sort of stake out a territory either. I kind of thought for a while she lived in this cave down here in the front, but after my black ghost knifefish died, she now just kind of swims around like the whole tank is hers. She doesn't seem to mind anybody else being in here. They are South American cichlids, so they need softer water with a lower pH, up around maybe 7.5 is the highest I would go. I think this tank probably sits around 7.3 or so, maybe even lower than that if the pH comes down over time. But I start with 7.3 coming out of my tap, and if anything, it probably goes down from there. And of course, I have 0 degrees hardness. I have very, very soft water. So soft, slightly acidic water. As far as feeding her goes, that's a piece of cake. She'll eat anything. I've never, from day one, I've just always fed the tank with my normal flake food, and, you know, occasionally I'll put bits of sinking shrimp pellets in there. I crumble up algae wafers. I'll crumble up krill, you know, freeze-dried river shrimp. She eats any and all of it. Bloodworms, anything like that. She'll devour stuff like that. And as I said, if you put some really small stuff in there, like maybe if you had some little shrimp swimming around, or if you had some really small, you know, brand new, fresh from the store neons that were still pretty tiny, she'd probably gobble those up. You know, I wouldn't necessarily trust her not to eat them. But as I said, she's not aggressive in the territorial sense, and all in all, just a really great fish. So any of the dwarf pikes are going to stay, you know, 5 inches or so, maybe less than that, and that's about all they're going to get. If you look at the regular pike cichlids, the South American pike cichlids, they generally get anywhere from like 8 to 18 inches. Some of those get pretty big. So definitely choose wisely if you're thinking about getting one of these dwarf pikes. Make sure it's a dwarf pike. The last one I had was Crenicichla compressiceps. It was a green dwarf pike cichlid, And it was pretty and it was attractive, but not like this regani. This regani is absolutely beautiful. And there's a few others out there that I think actually are more colorful and more pretty than this regani. So again, look around if you're interested in the Dwarf Pike Cichlids. So there you go. There's a nice long look at my 40 breeder before and after, and a little bit of a chat about my Crenicichla regani while we were at it. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you're subscribed. You never know what you're going to get with me. And, of course, feel free to leave any comments, requests, questions, or anything else, and I will do my best to get back to you. So thanks again, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.